What I am going to talk about is the choices you're making about your future. The future is not somewhere we're going, it's something we're all engaged in creating. I think it's self-evident that we should be trying to shape a future that is at least in principle sustainable, if not forever, at least for the foreseeable future. These three topics are all interlinked. Population, climate change, pressures on biodiversity are all interlinked, and you can't deal with any one of them in isolation. The Australian environment is unique. There is nothing like it anywhere else on Earth. An unusually high fraction of our plant and animal species are not found anywhere else on Earth. The three subsequent reports have said that every major problem is worsening. Yes, you should be alarmed. I'd be alarmed if I was your age. Our changing climate and growing population and economy are now confronting us with new challenges. I believe in making choices about your future. The first priority should be to maintain the quality of life, which makes this such a wonderful place to live. And your social and economic planning should be within the boundary of ecological sustainability, maintaining those natural values, keeping this a wonderful place to live. You should have a broad idea of where you want the surf coast to be in 30, 40, 50 years, because the decisions you make about population, about urban planning, about transport, are literally setting in concrete what things will be like in 50 years' time.
The just right planet doesn't exist as a choice for us anymore. The choices are between a hot planet, a very hot planet, and a boiling hot planet. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is the major group that does assessments of climate change, and it has concluded in its fifth assessment report, which was released 2 weeks ago, that yes, human activity is already impacting the climate system and already having major impacts not just on human systems but also on natural systems all around the world, and that this change in the climate is primarily due to human causes, human-caused increases in greenhouse gases. And for the first time, they used the irreversible word, that these continued emissions will have irreversible impacts on people and on ecosystems. We phase out all coal-fired power stations as quickly as possible. We have a choice that can be made around the Anglesey power station. Its impacts aren't only the impacts from its fossil fuel emissions, it is also having major health impacts on local residents, as all coal-fired power stations and all coal mines do. They have dramatic human health impacts. They need to be shut down, not just for the benefit of the global community, but also for the benefit of the local community. And then people say, well, what about the jobs? Well, actually, there are massive opportunities on the Surf Coast for new employment in solar power, in wind power, in wave power, and in tidal power, as well as doing this efficiently and effectively through renewable energies and energy efficiency. We need to ensure that the coal age is seen as a 19th century decision and the renewable energy age is 21st century. This is the choice: a red planet or a only slightly warmer planet. That red planet is business as usual until 2100. That's a planet that we haven't seen, no human society has seen at all. There will be increases in temperature, there will be more frequent hot extremes, there will be more bushfires, there will be sea level increases, irrespective of which choice we make. We have choices, and those choices are to hide our head in the sand, make the problem worse, and that is a choice that our government wants us to make at present, or we can make a choice to move to renewable energies, to move rapidly to zero carbon energy sources, and then we have at least a greater chance.
Australia is regarded as a mega diverse continent, southwest and Western Australia is a global hotspot. There are about 20 or 30 global hotspots. And I suggest that if you did the sums, you'd find out that southeastern Australia is also a global biodiversity hotspot. Nature is under assault globally and in Australia and locally. The rate of loss and degradation is accelerating. Once the system is destroyed or compromised, it's very often that nothing can be done effectively either because of technical issues or because of the cost of it to fix it up, to remediate it.
The politicians, almost to a man, and I use the gender-specific word advisedly, bucketed limits to growth. And I think because the title might have been designed to offend them, because most of them believe there are no limits to growth. They have the delusion that growth can go on forever in a closed system. And they misrepresented it as saying either that we would run out of resources or we'd be choked by pollution before the end of the century. And since that didn't happen, the Club of Rome got it wrong. In fact, the Club of Rome got it almost exactly right. And there's been recent studies by Dr. Graham Turner of CSIRO comparing the limits to growth projections with 40 years of data since 1970. And if we want to achieve social, economic and environmental collapse in the early to middle decades of this century, we are right on course. Go to it, G20, you're steering right for that desirable outcome. It is still possible to avert collapse, but it does require a different approach. And fundamentally, it requires accepting that the fatally flawed flirtation with flat earth economics needs to end. And we need to recognise that you cannot grow indefinitely in a closed system and make a transition to both a population and an economy that is stabilised. And the fundamental point is that if we don't stabilise the population and the economy by socially acceptable measures, they will be stabilised and curtailed by measures that will be very unpleasant. And I think most of us would like a better future for our descendants than the population being limited by starvation, disease and fighting amongst ourselves, and the economy being limited by running out of oil and catastrophic climate change.
In 2010, when there was a very hot and strong population debate in southeast Queensland and the Sunshine Coast, and the Sunshine Coast has many features which are comparable to the Surf Coast, the Queensland Government initiated a study into population growth and livability where people were asked their views about the consequences of rapid population growth on things like transport and planning, environmental and quality of life impacts and the like. And I think that the question that is asked here, is bigger better, is exactly the right question to ask, and in my view the answer is emphatically no. We want a survey of attitudes on the Surf Coast into rapid population growth and its impacts here in Torquay and beyond.
The recent crises of food, fuel and finance are simply the canaries in the mine that indicate that the current economic system is simply not sustainable. Not that we're running out of resources, not that pollution is a problem, but the current economic system is simply not sustainable because it's predicated on the presumption that you can have unlimited growth in a closed system. And the critical thing is for politicians to respond to that and start planning now for a soft landing, because if we don't plan for a soft landing, we're going to crash the system.